So friends, here is the sitch. At this point in the story of the Bible, the Israelite people have been conquered by the armies of the Babylonian Empire. As was the custom of the Babylonians, both Israel's ruling class, so that is the king and his family, the court officials, the priests and the prophets, so the ruling class of Israel, along with the professional class of Israel, the skilled workers, the artisans, they had been picked up and forcibly moved from Israel to Babylon. And the logic behind that move was that after several generations of assimilation, the Israelites would no longer be resistant to Babylonian rule. Which is to say that the people to whom Jeremiah is writing this morning's passage, which is a letter, the people to whom he is writing are people who have been violently uprooted from their homes and resettled in a hostile foreign land. And on top of that, to make matters even worse, we need to remember that the Israelites are not good monotheists like you and I are good monotheists. They don't believe that there's just one God out there, one invisible God that exists everywhere that just happens to go by different names. Rather, the Israelites were what scholars call monolatrists. Monolatrists. It's a $5 word for you. Your friends probably don't know it. I like you to feel like you're getting your money's worth when you come to church. But all that means is that while the Israelites believed that they owed their worship and their devotion and their affection to the God of Israel, they very much believed in the existence of other gods. And each of these other gods they believed was tied to a different geographic region. So while Yahweh was a big deal over in Israel, Babylon was under the control of a different deity. A deity that happened to be named Marduk. So not only were the Israelites in a hostile foreign land, they were also in a land that was under the control of a hostile foreign deity. So from the perspective of the Israelites, their situation was a dire one. They'd been removed from their homes, they'd been removed from their God, and they were now living in a dangerous, hostile, and inhospitable place. Which is why we find Jeremiah's advice in this morning's reading so very surprising, don't we? We are very surprised because common sense would seem to suggest that the best course of actions for the Israelites would be to pack up and get out of Dodge as fast as humanly possible. Maybe if they wanted to do it with a little flourish, they could go up to old King Nebuchadnezzar Moses style, say, "Let my people go," invite God to send some plagues his way, and then once he has been thoroughly pummeled into submission, they could escape town under the cover of night. Right? The Israelites have a playbook for this exact scenario. They have been here before. Which is why it is so surprising to us that Jeremiah doesn't tell the Israelites to flee back to Israel, but rather he tells them the exact opposite. So hear what he says again. He says to the Israelites in exile in Babylon, he says, "Build houses to live in. Plant gardens and eat what they grow. Marry and raise daughters and sons. Find partners for your children. Seek the peace and the prosperity of the city to which I exiled you. Pray to Yahweh for it, for if it prospers, you will prosper." So while admittedly Jeremiah is known for being a little bit whiny, he is known in scholastic circles as the weeping prophet. But for as whiny as Jeremiah is, he is not an idiot. He knows how difficult the circumstances of the Israelites are as they live in Babylon. And nonetheless, he doesn't tell them to escape as soon as they can, but rather he tells them to put down roots and make every effort to ensure that this place in which they live will become a place of flourishing. He tells them to work for the prosperity of Babylon and its people. Now, lest we begin to think that Jeremiah's advice is a self-serving kind of advice, that he's offering it in a, if Babylon prospers, you will prosper too, you'll get something out of it sort of way. I want us all to know that in this passage, Jeremiah invites the Israelites to pray for Babylon. He invites them to pray for it. And if you ever want to stop hating someone or something or some place, probably the easiest and best possible way to do that is start praying for its prosperity. So think of a person or situation that you are having a difficult time with in your life right now, a person that you're really struggling with, a relative, a coworker, a friend. And this is an activity. This is a homework assignment. Do this month. For the next month, every night before you go to bed, I want you to think of one or two things that person needs in order to prosper. And I know what you're thinking. I see it, your gears turning over here. What they need to prosper outside of a swift kick in the seat of the pants. But things that they really need in their life to prosper and flourish and grow. And I want you to pray for that person, and I want you to pray that those needs be met. And over the course of just one single month, I want you to watch as all that hate and resentment and the anger that you have towards that individual just kind of melts away. Because you cannot actively be praying for someone's prosperity without your orientation towards them being radically transformed in the process. So in other words, what Jeremiah is inviting the Israelites to do is to invest their whole selves, their whole lives, their whole love into this place that they live, imperfect as it is. And in so doing, helping it to become a place of flourishing, not just for themselves, but for everyone who lives there. So I want to tell you a bit of a story. If you've been around here long enough, you have probably heard it before, because it's kind of a once-in-a-year kind of story for me. If I had my druthers, it would be a once-a-week story, but I'm told that that's poor form. But back in 1988, a fresh-faced Jesuit named Greg Boyle graduated from seminary. And his very first position that he was assigned to was as the parish priest of a place called Dolores Mission out in Los Angeles. And at the time, Dolores Mission was considered the gang capital of the gang capital of the world. So every other block of this neighborhood was under the control of a different gang. Now, being a bit of a clergy person myself, I can tell you what most clergy would do when presented with this situation. What most of us would do would be to go to the hardware store, get some extra deadbolts for the door, maybe get some bars for the windows, and we'd put them up in the church, and then we would open our doors only on Sunday morning, let the good people come in, worship with us, but you better believe that after coffee hour, all 16 of those deadbolts is getting slammed shut until next Sunday. That is what most clergy would do, sad it is to say. But that is not what Greg Boyle did. Greg Boyle recognized that to really preach the gospel to this community, really to represent the way of Jesus in this community, meant that he had to do more for the young men caught up in these gangs than just preside over their funerals. And after just 3 months on the job, he had already presided over scores of them. So this is what he did, and do not try this at home. This is inadvisable action to take in your own life. But this is what Greg Boyle did. He hopped on his Huffy, and he rode from gang to gang, trying to negotiate peace treaties between them. And while ultimately that effort failed, in the process of doing it, he earned a lot of street cred. So much so that at all hours of the day and night, gangbangers started hanging out on his church grounds, much to the chagrin of all his good little church people. But as he got to know these young men and learn about their lives, he came to realize that most of them didn't join gangs because they wanted to be part of a gang. But most of them joined gangs because coming out of broken homes and broken schools and broken communities, they really saw it as the only opportunity in their lives for economic advancement. But the problem was, once they got old enough and mature enough and smart enough and realized that they wanted out of these gangs, they were so tatted from head to toe and they had rap sheets so long, no sane employer would possibly give them a job. So the first thing that Father Boyle did to help solve this problem was he went to the factories at the edge of town, and he tried to convince the factory owners to give these guys jobs. And while they agreed to the notion philosophically, no job offers ever actually materialized. So he decided to do something himself, and there on the church grounds, they started tattoo removal services. And some of these guys were so tatted up that they had to come in for 96 sittings just to get their visible tattoos removed, the ones that are above the neckline, the ones on their arms. 96 sittings to get those tattoos gone. But even still, he was finding that these guys were struggling and they were still having a hard time finding jobs with their rap sheets. So he decided to start a bakery staffed entirely by ex-gang members. Sounds like an awful idea, does it not? But it was enormously successful, and after a little while, they were making money hand over fist. And word of this project, which became to be known as Homeboy Industries, spread through the gang community, and pretty soon they were flooded with so many job applications that they didn't have enough work for these guys to do. So he went and he started a silk screening shop, and then a janitorial service, and then a cafe, all staffed by ex-gang members. So slowly but surely, what Greg Boyle was doing was he was investing his time and his love and his energy into this community that everybody else in the world thought was entirely God-forsaken. They thought it was a modern-day Babylon. And by investing his energies like that, it began to flourish. And it flourished so much so that in 1995, Laura Bush caught wind of it, First Lady Laura Bush, and she decided to pay them a visit. She came out to LA. She did a little tour of the silk screening shop, went to the bakery, had herself a muffin, I presume. But she was duly impressed with what she saw there. She went back to the White House, and then several months later, one of her staffers reached out to Father Boyle. And with an invitation to come to Washington, D.C., to the White House, to talk a little bit about his work, and then to attend a banquet afterwards. But not only was Father Boyle invited, but also 3 of his quote-unquote homies were also being invited to this event. So once he received those invitations, Father Boyle had just the 3 guys in mind, There were three guys that, according to him, if you had a casting call for homies, these would be the three guys that show up. They're all 6 foot tall, couple 100 pounds on them each, tatted head to toe, baggy pants, the works. In truth, they're kind of scary looking guys. If they were walking down the street, you'd probably go to the other side. But according to Father Boyle, these guys had hearts of gold. So he took them to Men's Wearhouse to get the first suits that they ever owned. And when they walked in, they were greeted by the staff who said, "Welcome to Men's Wearhouse. Let me show you the door." But Father Boyle explained to them the situation, and soon enough they got fitted, they got their suits, they got on their plane, took their first ever plane ride out to Washington, D.C. The speaking engagement went well, made it all the way through the banquet. The banquet was a very posh affair in the White House, tables spread, all sorts of delicious delicacies laid out on them. Along the walls, waiters standing by in crisp uniforms. And one of these young men looked down at the table, and he saw a little potato with the center carved out of it and some black stuff in the center. At the time, he didn't realize that it was caviar. So he took it, and he swallowed it whole, and then spit it out on the floor, and he shouted, "This tastes like not good," he said. This doesn't taste good at all. Father Boyle reports that after that, the Secret Service kind of lurched in a little closer to this guy. But that was the only really accident that happened. It's like on the plane, and they were headed back to LA. And one of the kids by the name of Alex, at one point he got up to go to the restroom. But he was gone for 45 minutes. When he got back to his seat, Father Boyle joked a little to him. He said, what happened back there? Did you fall in? But then when he took a second to look at Alex's face, he realized that there was a look of sheer panic on it. So he asked him, he said, "Alex, what's the matter?" And he said, "Father, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to make her cry." Father Boyle was, of course, a little taken aback, a little startled. He said, "Alex, just tell me what happened." Alex said that as he was standing, waiting to get into the restroom, he struck up a conversation with one of the flight attendants. And he said that he started talking to her, telling her about the work he's doing with Homeboy Industries, how he's a tour guide at the silk screening factory, even took her on a little mental tour of the facilities, told her about how he was working hard to change his life for his kids and for his wife, hoping to make the community in which he lived a better place. And then I told her, said Alex, I told her that yesterday we had made history because while over the years a number of crooks had called the White House home, never before had a gang member ever been intentionally invited to the White House. We made history, I told her. And she started to cry. And Father Boyle looked at Alex and he said, "Alex, the reason she started to cry was because she saw you. She didn't see your tattoos. She didn't see your baggy jeans. She didn't see your rap sheet. She saw you, and what's more, she recognized that you are a child of God." And sometimes when you recognize that someone is a child of God for the very first time, you start to cry. And that, Father Boyle said, is a very, very good thing. Seek the peace and the prosperity of the city, encourages the prophet Jeremiah. Help make it a place of flourishing. Help make it a place where every man, woman, and child is recognized as the beloved child of God that they truly are. And friends, as you head to the voting booth in 2 weeks' time, that is the same encouragement I want to offer you, because that is what our politics are supposed to be about. Seeking the peace and the prosperity of the places in which we live, making them places where every child of God can be recognized, welcomed, and loved. So as you're filling out those little circles on your ballot, I'm going to invite you to do so only for those people that you really truly believe are going to move the needle in that direction. I want you to vote only for those people who you really truly believe are going to seek the peace and prosperity of our city, of our state, of our country, and help build a place where all of God's children, not just a select few, not just the rich, but all of God's children can flourish and prosper and grow. In Jesus' name, amen.